I was out grocery shopping when a woman tapped me on the shoulder. "Your grandson is so well behaved," she smiled. I looked at her confused. "I don't have a grandson." Her face fell. "That little boy has been following you from the park." I turned around and saw a boy I had never met. He grabbed my hand. "Grandma, can we go home? I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my revenge story from. I want to know how far this story has traveled." That morning, I locked the door of my little house and slowly walked toward the familiar bus stop. The small street leading there looked the same as always, except today the sky was clearer, the sunlight softer, spreading through the canopies of the tall trees, and for some reason, my heart felt lighter. I stood waiting for the bus, breathing in the fresh morning air, and in that moment I felt I still belonged to this world, even if sometimes it made my heart ache. The bus rolled along streets I knew by heart. Through the dusty window, I saw street vendors setting up their goods, motorbikes rushing by, and kids laughing and running down the sidewalks. Today, the park near the supermarket seemed livelier than usual. Children's laughter rang out as they chased one another under the green trees. A few elderly folks were slowly doing Tai Chi, every movement calm, yet full of energy. Young couples walked hand in hand beneath the shade, their eyes sparkling with happiness. I couldn't help but watch, a fleeting warmth stirring inside me. The pure laughter of the kids reminded me of Elliot, my son, when he was little. He used to hold my hand, running all over the park, babbling endless little stories. The memory felt so vivid that I almost heard his voice echoing around me. Even though Elliot is now a grown man with his own family, and with cracks between us I never want to speak of again. The bus stopped in front of the supermarket and I got off, adjusting my scarf before heading inside. Saturday mornings were always busy here, but I liked the bustle. It made me feel like I was still part of life, still with small tasks to do, reasons to stay busy. I grabbed a basket and slowly walked along the rows of fresh vegetables. The earthy smell of morning glory, the light scent of greens, and the bright red of plump tomatoes soothed me. I stopped and carefully chose each bunch, each tomato, gently turning them over to check for bruises. It was an old habit, from when I used to cook for my whole family, when my kitchen was always full of laughter. At the fruit section, I stood before stacks of shiny red apples glowing under the supermarket lights. I absent-mindedly listened to the loudspeaker announce today's promotions while picking out the ripest ones. The sweet smell of apples made me smile, thinking I'd make a fruit salad for dinner. As I was lost in thought, I suddenly felt a light tap on my shoulder. I turned around startled. A woman about my age, her hair tied in a bun, was smiling kindly. "Your grandson is such a good boy," she said warmly. "He's been following you this whole time without fussing at all." I froze, as if yanked out of a dream. "What grandson?" I asked, my voice uncertain. "I went to the supermarket alone." A strange feeling began to stir inside me, as if something wasn't right. I had lived alone for many years, ever since Elliot left home, and I had never had grandchildren. The woman's words left me confused, as if she were talking about someone else, another life. The woman seemed surprised at my reaction too. She pointed behind me, her eyes puzzled. "The boy is standing right behind you," she said, her voice dropping as if afraid to startle someone. I slowly turned around, my heart suddenly beating faster for reasons I couldn't understand. And then I saw him. A boy, about 5 or 6 years old, stood there just a few steps away. His clothes were simple, a faded blue t-shirt and a pair of shorts with frayed edges. His big round eyes, shining brightly, stared at me without blinking, as if searching for something very important. In his arms he clutched an old stuffed animal, its fur rough and dirty, like it had been his companion for a long time. When he saw me looking, the boy pressed his lips together, his face showing a flicker of fear, but also a fragile glimmer of hope, like sunlight slipping through leaves. Before I could say anything, he timidly stepped forward, his tiny hand reaching out to gently grab mine. His hand was cold, trembling, but he held on tightly, as if afraid I might vanish. "Grandma," His voice was small, fragile, like a whisper of wind. "Can we go home?" My whole body froze. My hand, still held by the boy, trembled violently. I had no idea what was happening. I looked down at him, trying to find an explanation in those clear eyes. But all I saw was a painful sincerity. My heart clenched, overwhelmed by a feeling that was both strange and familiar, as if I had met this boy somewhere before, in a dream or in a forgotten memory. Around us, a few nearby shoppers began to stop, their curious eyes turning our way. Soft murmurs rippled through the air like tiny waves across a lake. The woman from earlier shook her head and whispered, almost just for me to hear, "Strange. I saw the boy following you from the park all the way here." The park? A shiver ran through me. This morning when I walked past the park, I had felt something strange, like someone was watching me. But I thought it was just a fleeting feeling, a random thought from an old woman who daydreams too much. Now the woman's words sent a chill down my spine. The air around me suddenly felt heavy, as if the whole supermarket was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. My voice stammered, faint, as I tried to stay calm. "No, he's not my grandson." I spoke without daring to look directly into the boy's eyes, afraid that gaze would shake me. But the boy didn't let go. Instead, his little hand tightened even more, as if he were clinging to me, clinging to one last hope. His eyes looked at me, saying nothing, yet silently pleading, "Don't leave me." The weight of curious eyes from the people around pressed down on my shoulders, making it hard to breathe. I don't know who this little boy is, but his clear eyes, full of hope, make my heart ache. I can't just stand here forever, surrounded by stares and whispers. I have to do something. I take a deep breath, trying to stay calm, then gently lead him towards the customer service desk at the back of the supermarket. On the way, I can feel each of his small steps, slow but clinging to me. He doesn't say a word, just hugs a worn-out stuffed animal tightly, as if it's the only thing that gives him a sense of safety. I glance at him and a strange feeling rises in me. I've lived alone for too long, used to the silence of my small house and the quiet days passing by. But now, a strange child calls me Grandma, and I don't know how to face that. At the customer service counter, I meet a big man in a security guard's uniform, but his voice is gentle. I try to explain, my voice trembling a little. This child, maybe he's lost his parents. I don't know him at all. But he's been following me from the park to here. The guard nods, crouches down to look at the boy and speaks softly, as if afraid of startling him. "Hey buddy, what's your name?" "Where are your parents?" The boy just lowers his head, clutching his stuffed animal tighter, saying nothing. His big round eyes stare at the floor, like he wants to hide from the whole world. The guard looks at me and shrugs helplessly. I sigh, sit down beside the boy, and soften my voice as much as I can. "Sweetie, what's your name?" "Can you tell Grandma?" I don't know why I called myself Grandma to him, but it just slipped out naturally, as if my heart had accepted something my mind still couldn't grasp. The boy lifts his face, his eyes wet with tears glistening under the bright supermarket lights. His voice is so thin, almost just a whisper. "Theo." Just one word, but it feels like a small stone dropped into the still lake inside me, sending ripples I can't name. Theo. I repeat the name in my head, trying to find a memory, a clue, anything, but nothing comes. I smile at him, hoping my smile will make him less afraid. "Theo, that's a beautiful name. Don't be scared. Grandma will help you find your parents, okay?" A young supermarket employee with a kind smile brings a paper cup of water and sets it in front of Theo. "Here, have a little water," she says, then turns to me. "Please sit with him for a bit. I'll take you both to the security office and we'll make an announcement to look for his family right away." I nod in thanks, feeling a little relief. Maybe in just a moment, Theo's parents will show up and everything will be solved. But deep down, I feel a strange part of me doesn't want that to happen. I don't understand why. The security office is small, with just enough space for an old wooden table and a few plastic chairs. The loudspeaker repeated its announcement, calling for the relatives of a little boy named Theo, about 5 or 6 years old, waiting at the supermarket. I sat beside him. Theo stayed silent, his small hand never letting go of mine for even a second. Every now and then, he squeezed tighter, as if afraid I might stand up and leave him. I looked down at his worn-out canvas shoes, the seams splitting, and felt a sharp ache in my chest. How could such a small child be wandering alone, without parents, without family? More than 30 minutes dragged by like a century. The loudspeaker kept repeating the message, but no one showed up. No phone call, no parent rushing to the service desk with a worried face. A creeping unease began to settle in me. Theo sat quietly at my side, head bowed, arms clutching a stuffed toy like it was the last thing he had in the world. I couldn't hold back any longer. I leaned toward him and asked softly, "Theo, tell me, why did you follow me?" He lifted his round eyes, hesitating, his voice so faint it was nearly swallowed by the supermarket noise. "I saw you at the park. I followed you from there to here." His words struck like lightning through my memory. That morning in the park, I had felt someone's gaze, a vague but undeniable sensation. I had brushed it off as the imagination of an old woman too sensitive for her own good. But now Theo confirmed it. He had followed me through the busy streets, all the way to this supermarket. I froze, not knowing how to respond. "Then where are your parents?" I asked, my voice trembling, hoping his answer would clear things up. But Theo pressed his lips tight and shook his head firmly, as if the question touched a wound too deep to speak of. His eyes lowered and a tear slid down his cheek, glistening before falling onto the worn stuffed toy. My chest tightened painfully. I wanted to hug him, to whisper that everything would be all right, but I wasn't sure if I had the right. Who was I to him? Just a stranger, an old woman he happened to see in the park. And yet that tiny hand clinging to mine, that trembling grip, made me feel an odd sense of connection, as if fate had deliberately placed this boy in my life. Supermarket employees began to gather, whispering among themselves. I caught bits and pieces about the police, about checking missing children reports. The young clerk who had spoken earlier turned to me, her voice apologetic. "Ma'am, we've been announcing for over half an hour and no one has shown up. I think this case might be complicated. Maybe you should take the boy to the nearest police station so they can investigate further. I can go with you if you'd like." I nodded, though my mind was still in turmoil. Taking Theo to the police was the right thing to do. I knew that. But as I looked at him pressed tightly against me, his little hand refusing to let go, a vague dread welled up inside me. What would happen to him if no parents could be found? If he truly had been abandoned? The thought made my heart clench, as though I were carrying a responsibility far greater than myself. I held Theo's hand as we left the supermarket and hailed a taxi waiting nearby. It was nearly noon, the sun blazing hotter, yet inside I felt nothing but cold. Theo climbed into the car, leaning against me, clutching his stuffed toy. Each time the car braked sharply, his hand instinctively tightened around mine, a reflex in search of safety. I looked down at his pale face, at his wide eyes that flickered with fear and a fragile hope. "Don't be afraid," I whispered, my voice unsteady. "I'll stay here with you." The police station door opened and a blast of cold air hit me, mixed with the stale smell of old coffee and paperwork. The harsh fluorescent lights reflected off the stained walls, making me shiver. I held Theo's hand tightly, guiding him inside, my steps slow but my heart heavy. He still clutched a worn-out stuffed animal, his frayed canvas shoes dragging across the tiled floor, making faint squeaking sounds. I looked down at him and saw his wide eyes filled with fear. Yet he clung to me as if I was his entire world at that moment. My chest tightened, torn between tenderness and confusion. I didn't know what I was doing, only that I couldn't abandon this child. We were led into the intake room, a small space with a few old plastic chairs and a wooden table full of scratches. I sat down and pulled Theo close beside me. His hand stayed locked in mine, icy and trembling. A young officer with a thin frame but kind eyes walked in. He introduced himself as Caleb, sat across from us and placed a notebook on the table. "Can you tell me the whole story?" he asked patiently. I took a deep breath, trying to put the events back in order. My voice shook as I began, recounting how I had passed the park that morning and felt a strange sense of being watched. Then the moment at the supermarket when Theo suddenly grabbed my hand and called me Grandma. I spoke slowly, detail by detail, as though searching for a clue in my own story. Caleb listened intently, occasionally jotting something down in his notebook. His eyes were focused, but I could still see a flicker of worry in them. When I finished, he nodded, then turned to Theo and lowered his voice gently. "Hey buddy, can you help me out a little? Do you remember where your house is?" Theo dropped his gaze, clutching his stuffed animal so tightly that more seams split open. He shook his head silently. Caleb didn't give up. He tried again, still softly. "Okay. What are your parents' names? Or anyone at home you remember?" This time Theo bit his lip, so hard I noticed a thin line of blood appear. He didn't answer, only bowed his head lower as if trying to disappear inside himself. I couldn't help it. I reached out and rubbed his back gently, whispering, "Theo, tell Grandma, okay? Everyone at home must be so worried about you." But he just shook his head, his teary eyes looking up at me like he was begging me not to ask again. That look pierced me, as if I had stumbled into a wound he desperately wanted hidden. Caleb sighed, stood up and motioned to a colleague. "We'll check the list of missing children in the city," he told me, before walking out of the room. I sat there beside Theo, feeling the heavy silence wrap around us. The hum of the air conditioner, the footsteps of the police officers in the hallway, and the steady ticking of the wall clock all seemed to be counting down the seconds of waiting. I handed Theo a bottle of water the supermarket clerk had given me earlier, still in my bag. "Drink, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile. The boy took the bottle, sipping in small gulps, but his eyes never left me, as if afraid that if he blinked, I would vanish. A female officer walked in, her face gentle, her hair neatly tied up. She introduced herself as Ellen, then sat down beside Theo, lowering herself to his eye level. "Theo, would you like to tell me a little about your home?" she asked, her voice soft, like a mother soothing her child. "I promise I won't scold you. Just a little bit, okay?" But Theo stayed silent, lips pressed tightly together, his gaze lowered. Ellen looked at me, shaking her head slightly as if to say she was just as helpless. Time crawled by, each minute heavy like a stone pressing against my chest. I kept asking myself, who is Theo? Why did he follow me? And why doesn't he want to say anything about his family? I looked at the boy, saw his small shoulders trembling slightly, and felt a strange mix inside me, both unfamiliar and yet deeply familiar. I wanted to protect him, to shield him, even though I didn't understand why I felt that way. Nearly an hour later, Caleb came back, a flicker of disappointment on his face. "We checked the list of missing children in the city, but there's no match for Theo," he said, his voice dropping. "There hasn't been a report about a boy named Theo, around 5 or 6 years old, in the past few months." His words made my heart sink. No report? Then where were his parents? Why wasn't anyone looking for him? The thought that Theo might have been abandoned stabbed at my heart, as if I were looking at my own loneliest days all over again. An older officer with graying hair stepped into the room. He introduced himself as Hank, the shift supervisor that day. He looked at Theo, then at me, his eyes thoughtful. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low and steady, "I've seen many cases like this. Sometimes children aren't lost because they wandered off, but because of more complicated reasons. It could be estranged relatives or family issues." He paused, as if weighing his words, then continued. "I suggest we try a DNA test. Sometimes that helps us find a lead, especially when the child refuses to speak." His suggestion stunned me. A DNA test? The thought felt like a cold wind sweeping through me, making me shiver. I had no grandchildren, no family except Elliot, my son. But when I looked at Theo and saw him nod slightly, his eyes shining with a faint, fragile hope, I suddenly felt I couldn't refuse. "All right," I said, my voice trembling. "I agree." I signed the form Hank handed me, my hands shaking so badly the pen nearly slipped. I didn't know what I was doing, only that I had to do something for Theo. The DNA sampling went quickly. A nurse came in, gently collecting samples from both me and Theo. The boy didn't resist. He just held my hand tightly the whole time, as if afraid that if he let go, everything would collapse. When it was done, Hank said to me, "The results will be ready in a few days. Go home and rest. We'll contact you as soon as we have the information." He looked at Theo, smiling faintly. "And the boy, can you take care of him for now? If not, we'll have to send him to the Child Protection Center." The Child Protection Center. Those words made my heart tighten. I looked at Theo and saw him staring at me, his eyes brimming with tears, almost pleading. "No," I answered right away, my voice steadier than I expected. "I'll take him home for now until we can find his family." I didn't know where that determination came from, but when I looked into Theo's eyes, I knew I couldn't let him go anywhere else. On the way out of the police station, Theo kept holding my hand tightly, his little steps clinging to mine. It was late afternoon, the golden-orange sunlight stretching across the road ahead, but my heart felt unbearably heavy. I called a taxi, helped Theo climb in, and sat down beside him. Exhausted, he dozed off in my arms, still clutching his worn-out stuffed animal. Looking at his pale face, I felt an ache I couldn't name. What had this boy gone through? Why did he choose me, an old stranger, to cling to? The taxi stopped in front of my house, but I hesitated. I couldn't just bring a strange child into my home right away, not with my heart still tangled in uncertainty, so I decided to ring the doorbell of my neighbor Marge, the one I trusted most. Marge opened the door, surprise flickering in her eyes when she saw me standing there with a boy. "Claire, what's going on?" she asked, her voice full of concern. I explained briefly, my throat tightening. "Marge, this is Theo. He's lost, and I don't know what to do yet. Can you keep him for one night? I need time to think." Marge looked at Theo, then back at me, her eyes soft with empathy. "Of course, Claire. Bring him in. I'll take care of him." She bent down, smiling gently at Theo. "Come in, sweetheart. I've got some cookies." Theo hesitated, glancing at me as if asking for permission. I nodded, brushing his hair lightly. "Go with Marge, honey. I'll be back tomorrow." He nodded, but his small hand let go of mine reluctantly, as if afraid this might be the last time we saw each other. A few days later, Theo and I returned to the police station. On the way, he didn't say a word, just quietly looked up at me, his eyes carrying both hope and fear. I smiled at him, trying to hide my own unease. "Don't worry, sweetheart," I whispered, stroking his jet-black hair. "Today we'll find out more and everything will be okay." The station looked the same as before, with its glaring fluorescent lights and the faint smell of old coffee. Officer Hank, the elderly policeman we'd met last time, was already waiting for us in the reception room. He held a thin folder in his hands, his face serious, but his eyes carrying a certain gentleness. "Mrs. Claire, please have a seat," he said, motioning for Theo and me to sit on the worn plastic chairs. I squeezed Theo's hand tighter, feeling his small fingers cling to mine, as if he too was holding on to me. Officer Hank opened the folder, his voice low and deliberate. "Ma'am, we have the results of the DNA test. The results show that you have an extremely close blood relation to this boy." He paused, looking straight into my eyes. "Most likely, this is your grandson." His words hit me like a hammer. I froze, the world around me spinning out of control. Grandson? How could that be? I shook my head, my voice trembling. No way. I don't have a grandchild. My son, Elliot, he. I left the sentence hanging, my mind in turmoil. Elliot had left home long ago, and after his failed marriage with Marla, I knew nothing about his life. But a grandson? That meant I didn't dare think further, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. I turned to Theo, my voice breaking. "Theo, your mom, who is she?" I was almost begging the boy to answer, hoping he'd say something to quiet the storm inside me. Theo looked up at me, his eyes brimming with tears, his voice clear but heavy with sorrow. "My mom's name is Marla. She always showed me family pictures. She said my grandma was a good person. She said you loved her a lot." The name Marla pierced straight through my heart like a knife. I felt my breath catch, as if the air in the small room had suddenly thickened. Marla, my former daughter-in-law, the gentle, patient girl who had never once spoken harshly to me. Memories of the days when Marla lived with us came rushing back, vivid as if it were yesterday. I remembered afternoons when she sat in the kitchen, carefully preparing dinner, her eyes always shining with kindness. I remembered how she once held my hand, telling me her dream of opening a small bakery, her voice filled with excitement. And I remembered with searing clarity the day Elliot, my son, stubbornly demanded a divorce so he could run after Tessa, his young, glamorous mistress. I had fought with him fiercely, trying to protect Marla at all costs. But it was Marla herself, eyes red and swollen, who took my hand and whispered through tears, "Mom, I don't want you caught between me and him. This marriage can't be saved anymore. Please let me go." From that day on, Marla vanished from my life as if she had never existed. I tried to find her, calling, asking around everywhere, but there wasn't a single trace. I lived with endless regret, blaming myself for not doing more to keep her. And now, hearing Marla's name from Theo's lips, all that pain surged back sharper than ever. Trembling, I asked, my voice breaking, "Then where is your mom now, Theo?" The boy lowered his head, his small shoulders quivering. His voice was barely a whisper. "She passed away. From illness. I live with distant relatives. That day I was playing alone in the park. Then I saw you." Theo's words hit me like a tidal wave, sweeping away everything inside me. I couldn't hold back any longer. I threw my arms around the boy, tears streaming uncontrollably. "Oh God, Marla," I sobbed, my voice breaking apart. "Why did you leave so quietly?" I held Theo tightly as if I could shield him from the whole world. His small shoulders trembled in my arms, and I felt his hot tears soaking through my shirt. "Don't be afraid," I whispered, my voice choking. "From now on, I'll take care of you like your mother would have." We sat there, in that tiny police station room, holding each other through our tears. Mr. Hank quietly stood up and left the room as if to give us space. I stroked Theo's hair, feeling the softness under my hand. In that moment, I knew my life had changed forever. Theo wasn't just a lost boy anymore. You are my blood, a part of the family I thought I had lost long ago. After calming down, I began the process of applying for temporary custody. Mr. Hank guided me through filling out the necessary paperwork, his voice gentle but firm. "We've contacted the child's distant relatives. They confirmed they're not able to provide long-term care. If you'd like, you can take him in temporarily until the formal procedures are completed." I nodded without hesitation. I didn't know how I would manage, but I knew I couldn't let Theo go anywhere else. On the way home, I stopped at a small shoe store near the house. Theo's old shoes were completely worn down, the straps nearly torn off, and every step he took made my heart ache. I took him into the store and picked out a pair of blue sneakers, the kind I thought a boy his age would like. Theo hesitated, staring at the new shoes with a look of both surprise and uncertainty. "Grandma, these are too expensive," he whispered, as if afraid I might change my mind. I smiled, patting his head. "They're not expensive, sweetheart. You deserve a proper pair of shoes." The shopkeeper smiled and helped Theo try them on. When he put on the new sneakers and took a few steps, I saw a rare, bright smile spread across his face. He turned to me, his voice soft but full of emotion. "Mom always said you're the best person in the world. Now I believe it. His words felt like a warm breeze blowing into my cold heart. I squeezed his hand, tears threatening to spill. Silently, I made a promise to Marla's spirit. From now on, I'll never let your son go without or feel abandoned ever again. After completing the temporary custody process, I knew I couldn't delay any longer. Elliot, my son, had to know about Theo. The truth that the boy was his child, his own flesh and blood, but the thought of facing Elliot, of confronting the wounds that had never healed between us, weighed heavily on me. I hadn't seen much of him since the day he left Marla for Tessa. Every time I thought about it, a dull ache returned, like an old wound that never healed. But for Theo, I had to do this. The boy deserved to know his father, and Elliot needed to take responsibility for the son he never knew. That afternoon, I took Theo home with me. A light rain was falling, tiny drops sliding down Theo's new coat, his blue sneakers glistening under the street lights. I held his hand, feeling the small, trembling fingers in mine. "Don't be afraid," I said, trying to keep my voice steady even though my heart was in turmoil. "Today I'm taking you to meet your father. Everything will be okay." Theo nodded, but his eyes were filled with worry. He clutched his worn-out stuffed animal tightly, as if it were his only shield against a strange new world. I stood at the gate, taking a deep breath before opening it. The moment I pushed the door open, Tessa was already standing there. She was wearing a bright red silk dress, her hair styled in elaborate curls, but the smile on her lips was forced when she saw me standing there with a strange boy. "Mom," she said, her voice sweet but unable to hide her surprise. "Who is this?" I hadn't even answered when Theo gripped my hand tighter, quickly hiding behind me as if he wanted to escape Tessa's probing gaze. I could feel his fear and it made my heart ache. "This is Theo," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "He's someone very important to me." I didn't want to tell the whole truth right away, not in front of Tessa, not when Theo was trembling by my side. At that moment, Elliot came out of the living room, his white shirt slightly wrinkled, his face showing clear exhaustion. He stopped when he saw me, then his eyes shifted to Theo. For a moment, I saw Elliot's eyes widen, as if he had just seen a ghost from the past. "Who is this?" His eyes glistened, and I knew he had recognized the familiar features of Marla on the boy's face. The big round eyes, the small nose, and even the shy smile that Marla once had. The air in the large living room suddenly felt suffocating. I took a breath and told everything, short but clear, from the moment I met Theo in the park, to when he held my hand in the supermarket, and finally the DNA results at the police station, confirming that Theo was my grandson, Elliot's son. I spoke without meeting Elliot's eyes, afraid that if I looked at him I wouldn't be able to hold back the pain rising inside me. When I finished, the room sank into heavy silence. Elliot stood there, his arms hanging loosely, as if he didn't know what to do with himself. Tessa sat on the sofa, her hands clasped tightly, trying to hide the discomfort written all over her face. "Oh, so he's Marla's son," she said, her voice sweet but fake, as if she were covering up her unease. "How surprising." Her eyes flicked toward Theo, cold as ice, and I saw the boy press even closer to me, trying to escape that look. Elliot's hand trembled as he reached toward Theo, his voice hoarse. "Son, come here to your dad." But Theo instantly stepped back, clinging to my leg, whispering, "I don't want to." His small voice was firm, as if he had built an invisible wall between himself and the father he had never known. I saw Elliot's eyes darken, a flash of pain crossing his face. I wanted to say something to ease the moment, but my throat was tight. No words came out. I bent down, hugged Theo, trying to comfort him. "It's okay. Sweetheart, this is your dad. You don't have to be afraid." But Theo only shook his head, whispering into my ear, low enough that only I could hear, "Grandma, I don't want to be near my stepmother." His innocent words cut into my heart like a knife. I looked at Tessa and saw her lips tighten, her eyes flicker with irritation before she quickly put on a calm face again. I knew she had heard, and I knew she didn't want Theo here. I stood up straight, looking directly into Elliot's eyes, my voice firmer than I expected. Elliot, you need to know the truth. Theo is your son, my grandson. I've arranged for temporary custody, but you have to take responsibility for him. Elliot opened his mouth, about to say something, but then fell silent, his eyes lost, as if caught between the past and the present. Tessa stood up, walked to Elliot's side and placed a hand on his shoulder. Mom, this needs time for us to think about, she said, her voice sweet but cold. We didn't expect a child to show up so suddenly. The way she emphasized the word suddenly made me clench my fists, fighting to hold back the anger rising inside me. Theo was not a sudden event. He was family, Marla's son, the woman Elliot once loved, and the grandson I had sworn to protect. I held Theo tighter, staring straight at Elliot, my voice heavy with disappointment. You abandoned Marla once. Don't let this boy suffer the same. Elliot lowered his head, saying nothing. Tessa stood there, a stiff smile on her lips, but I could feel the tension in every move she made. The next morning, I woke with a fragile sense of hope. I wanted to believe that with time, Theo would grow used to Elliot, to the house, and even to the little sister he had never known. I looked at Theo, sitting on the small sofa in the living room, his brand new blue shoes neatly placed beside him, his stuffed animal resting in his lap. He looked up at me, still a little shy, but I could see trust slowly taking root in his eyes. From the bedroom, I heard Lila's bright laughter, Elliot and Tessa's daughter. I took Theo by the hand and led him to the door. I opened it. Lila was sitting on the floor, surrounded by colorful puzzle pieces. The moment she saw Theo, she squealed, "Big brother, play with me!" She rushed over, pulling his hand with such innocent excitement. Theo looked startled, his wide eyes blinking in surprise, but then a real smile, the first I had ever seen from him, spread across his face. He sat on the floor, letting Lila place a puzzle piece in his hand. "This one goes here, big brother." Lila pointed eagerly, and Theo nodded, carefully fitting it in place. I stood quietly in the corner watching them. Lila chattered away, while Theo, though soft-spoken, began to answer, his voice gentle but sincere. Seeing the two of them lost in the puzzle pieces, a strange warmth filled my chest. Such a simple, small joy, but how precious it felt. It made me think of the days when Elliot was little, when I used to watch him play, my heart full of hope for a happy family. And now, watching Theo and Lila, I felt as though I had found a piece of that lost memory, even if only for a fleeting moment. Elliot stood at the doorway, quietly observing. I saw him wipe his eyes and whisper, just loud enough for me to hear, "He looks just like Marla, Mom." His words pierced my heart. I knew he was thinking of Marla, of the years he had thrown away because of his own selfishness. I wanted to say something, to comfort him, but my throat tightened. I only nodded, my eyes fixed on Theo, where that fragile light of joy flickered. But it didn't last long. Tessa walked out of the kitchen, a dish towel in her hand, her face cold. When she saw Lila laughing beside Theo, her expression darkened instantly. "Lila," she called, her voice sharp. "Don't bother your brother. Go play by yourself." She rushed over, yanking Lila's hand away from Theo's, the movement so rough the little girl nearly fell. Lila pouted, her voice full of protest. "But I was playing with him." "I don't want to." Tessa didn't let her say more, dragging her roughly toward the hallway. Lila turned back to look at Theo, her eyes sad, as if she couldn't understand why her happiness had been cut short. Theo watched her, the bright smile on his face fading. He lowered his head, clutching his stuffed animal tightly, curling into himself like a startled bird. I stood there, feeling the suffocating heaviness filling the house. A vague unease stirred in me, as if I had just witnessed something that should never have happened. Tessa turned back, forcing a strained smile. "Mom, she's still little and she clings a lot. I just don't want her to bother Theo." But her eyes, cold and distant, told a different truth. I clenched my hands, struggling to hold back the anger rising inside me. I wanted to say that Lila wasn't bothering Theo, that the two kids were happily playing together, but I knew that saying it out loud wouldn't change a thing. That night, dinner was laid out on the big dining table, but hardly anyone spoke. Theo sat next to me, nibbling at his food, eyes lowered. Lila, across from him, glanced at her brother now and then, but whenever she tried to say something, Tessa quickly cut her off, asking about her homework or other trivial things. Elliot stayed silent, his eyes lost, as if trapped between the weight of past and present. After dinner, as I walked through the kitchen to get more water, I accidentally overheard Tessa and Elliot arguing. She tried to keep her voice down, but the bitterness sharpened every word. "Don't you see? That bastard's presence will destroy this family. Are you really going to let him wedge himself between us?" Her voice was like a blade, cold and cutting. I froze by the doorway, my hand instinctively gripping Theo's, who was standing next to me, silently listening. Elliot's reply came, angry but trembling. "Don't say that, Tessa. He's my son." His words were like a knife, not only to Tessa, but also to me. I heard Theo exhale sharply, his small shoulders trembling. He clutched my hand tightly, as if afraid that if he let go, he'd be swept away by the storm of those cruel words. I pulled Theo into my arms, leading him away from the kitchen door, not wanting him to hear more. But the damage was already done. The little joy I had seen on his face while playing with Lila was now crushed by Tessa's selfishness and cruelty. I stroked his hair, whispering, "Don't be afraid, sweetheart. I'm here with you." But deep down, I knew those words weren't enough to soothe the wound he had just suffered. In the days following that tense dinner, I noticed Theo changed drastically. The shy smile I used to see when he played with Lila was gone. Instead, he became withdrawn, like a small shadow curled up in the corner of the room. Every time I tried to start a conversation, he only gave short answers, his eyes always fixed on the floor, as if hiding something inside. When Lila came running to ask him to play, Theo refused too. "I'm tired," he said, forcing a weak smile, then sat still on the chair, clutching a worn-out stuffed animal. I started paying closer attention. Every time Tessa showed up, Theo would instantly fall silent. His big round eyes dropped down, never daring to look anyone in the face, as if he were afraid of something. I asked him many times, as gently as I could, "Theo, is something wrong? Tell Grandma, I'll help you." But he only shook his head, his voice so faint it was barely there. "It's nothing." I knew he was hiding something from me, and that made my heart uneasy. A 5-year-old shouldn't carry such a heavy look in his eyes, as if he were bearing a burden I couldn't yet understand. I decided not to push him, but inside, I promised myself I'd find a way to protect him. I started taking Theo to the park, buying him ice cream or reading together in my small room. Those moments seemed to ease his tension, but I could still sense he was keeping a secret, a fear he couldn't share. Every time I looked at his new blue shoes, I remembered his words. "Mom says you're the best person in the world," and it only strengthened my resolve to find out what was happening. One afternoon, I told them I was going on a short trip with some neighbors. I packed a suitcase and pulled it out the door as if I really were leaving. Tessa walked me out, but I clearly saw a glimmer of smugness in her eyes she couldn't hide. I wandered around the neighborhood for about half an hour before heading back, but the door was locked tight. I knocked and rang the bell for 5 minutes before I finally heard footsteps rushing over. Tessa opened the door, her face showing a flicker of surprise before she quickly forced a smile. "Mom, why are you back already?" she asked, her tone sweet but cold. I didn't have time to answer, because the sight before me left me frozen. Theo was standing in the corner of the living room, holding a broom taller than him, slowly sweeping the floor. His face was flushed red, sweat beading on his forehead, and his eyes were weary, as if he'd been at it for a long time. Horrified, I rushed to him, knelt down, and pressed my hand to his forehead. Burning hot. "Theo!" I cried out, my voice trembling. "You have such a high fever. Why are you sweeping?" Theo looked at me, his eyes brimming with tears, but he stayed silent, bowing his head as if afraid of something. I spun toward Tessa, my voice shaking with anger. "Why didn't you take him to the doctor when he's burning with fever? How could you make him do chores in this condition?" Tessa stood there, arms crossed, speaking casually as if nothing were wrong. "He's just a little tired. Mom, I thought letting him work up a sweat would make him feel better." Her words cut like a knife, cold and cruel. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A 5-year-old, feverish and trembling, forced to sweep the floor? I felt my blood boil, but I held myself back because I knew if I lost control, Theo would be even more frightened. I scooped him up and set him on the sofa, then quickly grabbed my phone to call a taxi. "Rest, sweetheart," I whispered, my voice soft but shaking. "Grandma's taking you to the doctor right now." Theo nodded, though his eyes were full of worry. As I helped him to his feet, he whispered so softly I had to lean close to hear. "Grandma, Auntie told me not to tell anyone. She said if I snitched, you'd hate me and leave me." Each word pierced my heart like a needle. I hugged him tightly, tears spilling down my face. "No, my love," I choked out. "Grandma will never hate you, never leave you. Don't be afraid." But inside, I felt a fury boiling over, a pain beyond words. What did Tessa do to my poor grandson? Why was she so cruel? I rushed Theo to the hospital immediately. In the taxi, he trembled in my arms, clutching his stuffed animal tight like a shield. I stroked his hair, trying to keep my voice calm. "You'll be okay. Grandma's here." But inside, I couldn't stop blaming myself. I had taken Theo to Elliot's house, hoping he would find a family. But instead, he suffered pain he should never have known. The doctor diagnosed him with a severe throat infection, a high fever from lack of proper care. "He needs complete rest and the right dosage of medicine," the doctor said firmly. "If it lasts any longer, it could get worse." I nodded, holding Theo tightly in the waiting room as tears kept falling. I couldn't imagine what he had endured in that house, under Tessa's control. That night, when we got home, I made him a cup of warm milk and sat beside him on the small bed in the living room. He sipped slowly, his eyes still carrying fear. I softened my voice. "Theo, tell Grandma what happened." I knew I was touching a wound, but I needed the truth to protect him. For the first time, Theo opened up. He broke down in tears, burying his face in my shoulder, his voice trembling. "Aunt made me do everything, Grandma. Mopping, washing dishes, doing laundry. I was so tired, but she said if I didn't, she'd kick me out. When I got sick, she wouldn't let me rest, and she said if I told you, you wouldn't love me anymore." He sobbed uncontrollably, his small shoulders shaking in my arms. "I'm so scared, Grandma. I'm scared you'll leave me." I held him tighter, a rage burning inside me like never before. "I will never leave you," I said, my voice choked. "You are my grandson, my everything. I'll protect you no matter what." I stroked his hair, feeling his hot tears soaking my shirt. In that moment, I swore to myself I would never let Tessa or anyone else hurt Theo again. The next morning, as the sun rose, I woke with a fierce determination. I looked at the boy sleeping peacefully on the little bed in the living room, his pale face calm. The stuffed animal still nestled in his arms. I brushed his hair gently, my heart aching at the memory of what he had confessed the night before. I knew I had to act not only for Theo, but for the promise I had made silently to Marla, that I would protect her son with all my heart. I prepared a simple breakfast, some bread with jam, and a warm glass of milk for Theo. When he woke up, his eyes still heavy from the fever, he gave me a faint smile, as if trying to comfort me. "Eat your breakfast, then we'll go see your dad for a while," I said, my tone soft but firm. Theo nodded, but I caught the flicker of worry in his eyes. I held his hand and whispered, "Don't be afraid. Grandma is here with you." In the living room, Elliot and Tessa were sitting on the sofa, coffee cups in their hands. When she saw me and Theo, she stood up with a forced smile. "Mom, what's going on?" she said, her voice sweet but edged with tension. Theo pressed against me, his small hand gripping mine tightly, eyes cast down. I pulled him onto the chair beside me, placed my hand on his shoulder to reassure him, then looked straight at Elliot and Tessa. "I don't want to beat around the bush," I began, my voice trembling with anger though I tried to stay calm. "Yesterday I saw Theo burning with fever, his face flushed. Yet he was still forced to hold a broom and clean the house. He's only 5 years old, Tessa. 5 years old? You neglected him, didn't take him to the doctor, and even threatened him, telling him that if he told me, I would hate him and abandon him. I paused, drawing in a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. I saw everything with my own eyes, Tessa. Do you have anything to say for yourself? Tessa immediately denied it, her voice high-pitched and defensive. Mom, don't listen to his lies. Kids make things up all the time. I just asked him to do a few chores to teach him independence. Don't overreact. She shot Theo a sharp, cold glare, as if to intimidate him right in front of me. Theo trembled and clung to me even tighter, which only fueled my anger like fire. I'm not overreacting, I replied, my voice icy, staring straight into Tessa's eyes. I saw with my own eyes that the boy had a high fever, clutching a broom bigger than his whole body. Do you really think a 5-year-old needs to learn independence by sweeping the house while sick? Do you need more proof? I turned to Elliot, hoping he would say something, would stand up and defend his son, but Elliot just sat there, head in his hands, his face filled with confusion and helplessness. I really don't know what to do, he stammered, his voice weak. His words were like the final blow of a knife. I looked at my son, the one I had once pinned so many hopes on, and felt an endless wave of disappointment. You don't have the strength to protect your own son, I said, my voice shaking with anger and pain. Then let me do it for you. I stood up, pulling Theo with me, facing them both head on. From today, I will move out with Theo. That boy cannot live in a house where the stepmother is cruel and the father is weak and spineless. Tessa opened her mouth to protest, but I raised my hand to stop her. I'm not finished, I continued, my voice firmer than ever. 70% of the assets I currently own, I will put in my will to leave it all to Theo, as compensation for what he and his mother have endured. The rest, I will set aside for a scholarship fund for Lila, so she has a good future. As for you and your wife, you won't get a single penny. I emphasized every word, as if engraving my decision into their minds. The room went dead silent. Tessa's face turned pale, her lips pressed tightly together, her eyes flashing with anger but too afraid to speak. Elliot bowed his head, unable to look at me, his hands clenched so hard his knuckles turned white. I knew my words hit like a hard blow, but I didn't regret them. Theo needed me, and I would do everything to protect him. I held his hand and led him out of that house. On the way home, he stayed silent, but his small hand never let go of mine. When we got on the bus, Theo looked up and whispered, Grandma, I don't have to go back there anymore, right? I knelt down, pulled him into my arms, and said with a trembling voice, That's right, honey. From now on, you'll stay with me, only with me. The next morning, I packed a few belongings, just the essentials for the two of us. I took Theo to my closest friend, Marge, the person I trusted most. When she opened the door and saw us standing there with a couple of plain bags, she understood right away. Claire, come in, she said, her voice emotional, then hugged us tightly. Stay as long as you want. My house is always open for you two. I smiled, tears welling up. Thank you, Marge, I said. It's just temporary. I'll find a place for us soon. That night, I laid out a blanket for Theo on the little bed in Marge's living room. He curled up under the covers, clutching his stuffed animal, and for the first time since I'd met him, he slept peacefully. No frightened glances, no nightmares startling him awake. Watching him sleep, I felt a wave of relief, though the thought of Elliot still carried its sting. I had lost my son to his own bad choices, but I would not let Theo suffer the same fate. Just a few days later, I found a small, cozy apartment near the park where I had first met Theo. It wasn't big, just one bedroom and a small living room, but it was warm enough for the two of us. I cleaned it up myself, set up a little bed for Theo, and hung a few colorful pictures to brighten the room. I even bought a small bookshelf and filled it with children's books I thought he'd like. When Theo stepped inside, his eyes lit up and he ran around, touching everything with curiosity. Is this really our home, Grandma? He asked, his voice full of wonder. "It really is, sweetheart," I answered, smiling. "From now on, this is our home." Theo nodded, a big smile spreading across his face, and I knew he was starting to feel the safety I had promised him. I spent the rest of that day finishing the paperwork to apply for official guardianship of Theo. When I signed the last form, my hands shook, not from fear, but from an overwhelming sense of relief. Finally, my grandson had a real home, a place where he would be loved and protected. Months passed since Theo and I moved into our little apartment. It slowly turned into a true home. The colorful drawings he made in school filled the walls, right next to the bookshelf stacked with his favorite storybooks. Every morning, I walked him to the nearby kindergarten, watching him run into the schoolyard with his friends, laughing brightly. Seeing Theo regain his innocence warmed my heart, even though the painful memories of the past still quietly stirred inside me from time to time. Life for the two of us slowly settled into a rhythm. I learned how to balance taking care of Theo with the small tasks of daily life. I cooked the meals he liked, like fragrant chicken porridge or egg sandwiches, and every evening I sat beside him, reading stories or listening to him talk about his new friends at school. Theo began to open up more, his clear voice filling the apartment like a melody soothing the scars in my heart. But I knew that deep inside those wide eyes, there was still a faint fear, a shadow left from the days he had to face Tessa. One afternoon, while I was chopping vegetables in the kitchen to prepare dinner, the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on my apron, stepped out to open the door, and froze when I saw Elliot standing there. He looked far more worn down than the last time I had seen him. Messy hair, dark circles under his eyes, and a wrinkled shirt that looked as if he had been wearing it for days. "Mom," he whispered, his voice hoarse, almost broken. I looked at my son, and a mix of pity and anger welled up inside me. I stayed silent, motioned for him to come in, but in my heart I knew this meeting would not be easy. Theo was sitting at the table, coloring a picture of a small house. The moment he saw Elliot, he dropped his crayon, ran to hide behind me, and clutched tightly at the hem of my shirt. I could feel the tension in his little body, and it pierced my heart. Elliot bent down, trying to say, "Son," but Theo turned his face away coldly, eyes downcast, as if building an invisible wall between himself and his father. Elliot straightened up, his face showing clear pain, but he said nothing more, only followed me quietly into the living room. I poured 2 cups of tea, set one in front of him, and sat down across from him. Theo stayed behind me, refusing to move. Even when I gently said, "Go play in your room for a bit. I'll call you when I'm done talking with your dad." But he shook his head, clinging tightly to me, as if afraid that something terrible would happen if he left. I didn't force him, only stroked his hair softly, then turned to Elliot, my voice calm but firm. "Why are you here?" Elliot lowered his head, his hands clasped tightly together as if struggling to find the words. "Mom," he began, his voice choked. Things are really bad. My work is falling apart, clients keep canceling contracts, and my boss is putting constant pressure on me. At home, Tessa and I argue all the time. Sometimes she even leaves Lila alone, crying by herself. I've had to ask the neighbors to watch her." He stopped, took a deep breath, as if trying to hold back his emotions. "Mom, I know I was wrong. I wronged Marla, and I wronged Theo. I want to come back, to live with you and my son." Elliot's words hit me like a cold wind, making me shiver. I quietly set down my teacup and looked straight into my son's eyes. These were words I had once longed to hear, but now they only weighed heavier on my heart. "Elliot," I said, my voice slow but steady with determination, "the person you need to apologize to isn't me, but Theo and Marla's soul. You abandoned your family, chose Tessa, and left a 5-year-old child to suffer wounds he should never have had to bear. I can't forget what you did." Elliot lowered his head, his eyes red, but he didn't argue. I went on, my voice trembling with emotion. "I saw Theo with a high fever, holding a broom, trying to sweep the floor while Tessa ignored him. I heard him say he was threatened, forced to do chores even when he was sick. You're his father, Elliot, but you didn't protect him. I can't let Theo go on living in that kind of environment. I stopped and looked at Theo, who was sitting with his head down, clutching his stuffed animal. You can visit him whenever you want, but living together like before, that can never happen again. The room fell silent. Elliot sat there with his head in his hands, as if trying to absorb my words. I saw his shoulders shake, and I knew he was crying. Part of me wanted to stand up, hold my son, and comfort him like I used to when he was little. But the bigger part of me couldn't forgive the mistakes he had made, not only to Marla, but to Theo as well. Elliot stood up, his voice weak. Mom, I understand. I'll try to make things right. He turned to Theo, trying once more. Theo, I'm sorry, son. But Theo only gripped my hand tighter, gave no reply, and stared coldly at the floor. The door closed behind Elliot, his footsteps fading down the hall, and I felt pain mixed with an icy emptiness inside me. I had lost my son long ago, the day he chose Tessa and abandoned Marla. But I wouldn't let Theo share the same fate. I turned to him, knelt in front of him, and gently brushed his hair. Are you okay? I asked softly. Theo nodded, but his eyes were still full of sadness. Grandma, he whispered, will Dad come back again? I smiled, though my heart was heavy. If he wants to, he'll come visit, but don't worry. I'll always be here with you, okay? Theo nodded, then suddenly hugged me tight, resting his head on my shoulder. I held him close, feeling the warmth of his small body, and in that moment I knew I had done the right thing. Our lives, just the two of us in that little apartment, went on peacefully. Every morning I walked him to school, watching him run into the yard with his tiny backpack, smiling brightly as he waved goodbye. In the afternoons I picked him up, and together we cooked simple but warm meals, sometimes a plate of fragrant fried rice with egg, sometimes a sweet bowl of water spinach soup. At night we sat together on the old sofa, and I read him fairy tales while he listened intently, his big round eyes sparkling. Theo's pure smile had returned, always on his lips, and every time I saw it, my heart felt warmed after so many cold days. I also found new joy for myself. One day, walking past the church nearby, I saw a sign about a charity cooking group. Without thinking too much, I signed up to join. Every week, along with the women in the group, I helped cook big pots of porridge, prepare sandwiches, and make juice for the orphans in the neighborhood. This work not only kept me busy, but also gave me the feeling that I still had value, that I could still do something meaningful. Theo usually came with me, running around helping to pick vegetables, wash dishes, or just playing with the other kids. Watching him run, laugh out loud, and play with them, I realized Theo had become more open and lively. He was no longer the shy little boy who used to hide behind me whenever strangers appeared, but a cheerful, carefree child. Elliot started visiting more often, and every time he brought Lila along. The little girl, with her tight curls and sparkling eyes, was always the one who brought joy to Theo. As soon as she walked in, she would shout, "Theo! Play with me," and run to hug her brother. Theo, though still a bit cautious around Elliot, deeply loved his sister. The two of them often sat on the living room floor, building blocks or drawing together, their bright laughter filling the small apartment. I often spent time telling them fairy tales or taking them to the nearby park, the same one Theo went with me to the first time. Watching the two siblings holding hands, running under the green trees, my heart filled with warmth, as if the broken pieces of my family were slowly being put back together. One afternoon, as I sat on a wooden bench in the park watching Theo and Lila play tag, Lila suddenly ran over, plopped down beside me, breathing hard. "Grandma," she whispered, her clear little voice, "I wish I could be with Theo every day." I smiled, patting her head. "Then you have to come visit Grandma and your brother often," I replied, trying to sound cheerful, even though deep down I knew it wasn't that simple. Lila nodded, then ran back to Theo, their laughter rising again, mingling with the soft golden light of the afternoon. Elliot stood quietly on the apartment balcony, looking down at the two children playing. I saw him turn away, quickly wiping his eyes, then walk towards me, his voice trembling. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you for keeping this part of the family for me." His words pierced my heart. I didn't answer, just silently nodded, my eyes fixed on Theo and Lila. I knew Elliot was regretting, but the wounds he caused Marla, Theo, and even me couldn't easily fade. Still, seeing the two children so happy together, I felt some comfort. Maybe, even if things couldn't be fully healed, I could still give them a whole childhood. One soft sunny afternoon, I sat on the steps in front of the apartment, letting the gentle sunset fall on my shoulders. In the yard below, Theo and Lila were playing catch, their laughter echoing all around. I smiled, a strange peace settling over me. Our little apartment, though small, had truly become a home, a place where Theo was loved and protected. I thought of Marla, of her gentle smile, and I believed she was smiling somewhere, pleased to see her son growing up in my arms. That night, as I read Theo a bedtime story, he suddenly looked up at me and asked, "Grandma, do you get tired taking care of me?" His question caught me off guard. I smiled, gently stroking his hair. "No, sweetheart. Taking care of you is my greatest joy." Theo nodded, then hugged me tight, his tiny voice whispering, "I love you so much, Grandma." I held him close, tears welling in my eyes. "I love you too, Theo," I whispered. "Grandma will always be here with you." When Theo had fallen sound asleep, I sat by the window, looking out into the still night. I thought about the journey the two of us had been through, from the day he held my hand at the supermarket, to those sorrowful months at Elliot's house, and now to this little home I had built for him. My life at 63, which once seemed destined to fade away in loneliness, had become more meaningful than ever thanks to Theo. He was not just my grandson. He was the light, the reason for me to keep living and loving. I took an old frame out of the cabinet, the only picture left of Marla, taken one afternoon in my kitchen, where she smiled so gently. I placed the frame on the table, next to Theo's drawing of a small house. "Marla," I whispered, "rest assured, I'll take good care of Theo." A soft breeze slipped through the window, as if carrying a reply from far away. Under the pale moonlight, our little apartment quietly drifted into sleep. Theo lay on the bed, still clutching his stuffed animal, and I knew that no matter how painful the past had been, the two of us had found a new home, one built on love, not lies or regrets. After everything I had lived through with Theo, I understood that life will always throw unexpected turns, but true love is what can save us and heal every wound. Family is not just made of blood, but of protection, kindness, and responsibility we give one another. If I had turned away that day, perhaps the boy would have forever lost his faith in this world. The message I want to leave everyone is this: never close your eyes to the pain of a child or to the injustice right before you, because sometimes a single outstretched hand can change a person's whole life. The story you just heard has had names and locations changed to protect the identity of those involved. We don't share this to judge, but in the hope that someone will listen and pause to reflect. How many mothers are silently enduring within their own homes? I truly ask myself, if you were in my place, what would you do? Would you choose silence to keep the peace? Or would you dare to face it all and reclaim your own voice? I want to know your thoughts, because every story can become a candle lighting the way for someone else. God always blesses, and I believe courage will guide us toward brighter days. For now, on the end screen, I'll leave 2 of the most beloved stories on the channel. I believe you'll be surprised. Thank you for staying with me until this very moment.